framing on a ski trip to Arctic Norway. And then the week after that, January 31st, is another special one, Cycling Across the Americas by Maury Hayes and his girlfriend. I don't have her name up here, but anyway, it's going to be a great one. It's about cycling from Alaska to Argentina. So that's 2 weeks from tonight. And then we'll have a break during February, but for March and April, we'll have George Figdor, Brian Weed, and John Svensson will all be giving talks about exciting places. So lots of good things to look forward to. And then for tonight's talk, we have Deb Marshall and Dennis Geasan. Deb has longtime connections to Haines and ran the Fiddlehead restaurant in Juneau for many years or decades. She's a longtime MC for the Alaska Folk Festival and the Southeast Alaska State Fair Wearable Art Show. Last year, she did an Armchair Travelers talk on the Camino in Spain. And Dennis Geasan is a geologist and GIS specialist who has worked remotely from Haines and Reno for many years. Last year, he did an Armchair Travelers talk about hiking around the Matterhorn. So today they're giving one together. Welcome, Dennis and Deborah. And thanks to Matt Gilson, who's running the Zoom and basically being the coordinator for this whole series. My wife, Cindy, organizes this. She's not available tonight, so that's why I'm introducing. But thanks to Matt for all the logistical help in the background there. Welcome, Dennis and Deborah.
Thank you, Russ. Do we need to mention to people to turn their videos off?
Yeah, if you are on here, try to stop your video because it helps with the bandwidth, so that people that are watching don't have as much active video to try to with our slow connections we have in Haines. So yes, please stop your video, and I'm going to stop mine right now.
Okay, Russ, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, guys, we're going to take you on a quick hour tour of Tenochtitlan, Mexico City, and Tenochtitlan in our very unsophisticated Nahuatl Aztec language, which, just as a quick aside, there are 300 indigenous languages still being spoken in Mexico, and there's Nahuatl names, place names all over Mexico City. Okay, the first of many interesting things. We wanted just to start off by asking everybody who is here, if you haven't been to Mexico City, what you think it might be like, because at least for myself, I'd had many trips to Mexico and never been to Mexico City because I was afraid, dirt and crime and crowds, and was really excited when Dennis agreed to go exploring Mexico City for a couple of weeks with me last December. And we were so pleasantly surprised. So a great deal of our presentation is dispelling the myths that we had believed about what Mexico City might be like. So tonight we're gonna wander through Roma Norte, the neighborhood we were in. We'll explore Chapultepec Park, which the slide that's up is the park. We'll walk down to the Zocalo, and we'll take field trips to the Basilica Guadalupe and Pyramids of the Sun and the Moon. And then we'll end with a very small sampling of the amazing museums in CDMX.
Yeah, and by then, you might be seeing a nice sunrise.
We would like you to have questions. So we're trying to keep this to an hour so we can have questions. Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. This is what you see when you're landing in the airport. This is what, we might think of Mexico City. Densely crowded, 25 million people. And we're at over 7,000 feet. So Mexican flag we'll get back to, but Tenochtitlan was built by the Aztec in the 200 years before the conquest. And you can see the Mexican flag over here. They decided to place the city where the gods told them they would see an eagle eating a snake off of a cactus. And that is today the Mexican flag. And that is why the Aztecs decided to settle on the Lake of the Moon. So it was a big lake. And oh, just as an aside, CDMX with Dennis's cool technology. Tenochtitlan is located right here at the end of the arrow where we see the eagle and we see the snake and we see the cactus. So this is what's left of Mexico after the US took a big bite out of it. And you can see where Mexico City is, fairly far south. And before we leave this slide, the Caribbean is where the Cortez came in to conquer from the Veracruz side. Down here. Yeah, perfect. This is what Cortez saw when he came over the mountain range with Malinche, his indigenous consort. It was 300,000 people living on basically, floating on the lake with floating gardens, with rampways. They canoed, and this was where we got the name of the navel, because it's the belly button of Mexico. And I put these two books up because Conquest by Hugh Thomas is a fabulous read. Life is always much more interesting, I think, than fiction. But to see how Cortez managed to conquer this very sophisticated civilization with horses, dogs, and of course, guns, germs, and steel. But Laura Escoval wrote a book about Malinche, who was his consort. She is not well liked by the Mexicans because she was the indigenous woman who was his consort and interpreted his speeches and helped Cortez turn the local tribes against Montezuma. And with their help, they conquered Montezuma and the Aztecs within a couple of years. So by 1521, the Spaniards were in charge. Soy porque somos. I am because we are very Mexican. It's a, yeah. Well, we'll talk more about it. Go ahead. Soy porque somos.
So yeah, so now my turn. I was definitely surprised dropping into Mexico City in this Roma Norte area. Very modern, big buildings, beautiful architecture to the buildings, and unique kinds of architecture. And then underneath some of these buildings are new buildings that have kind of, I guess, more classic style, but housing, a Mac store or Apple store, this kind of thing. And one thing to point out, we rode a lot of these taxis around Mexico while we were there. They usually had some kind of pink hood, or the entire car was pink. But we found the taxi system to be excellent. Never had a problem. Only one guy we kind of thought might have tried to
lengthen the ride
or take more money than we maybe should have paid him. But otherwise, it was great. We did some Uber stuff too. It was good.
And at one point, the cabbie, a young man, had a collection of coins because he was giving money to women who were begging. I've never seen a cab driver do that before.
No, it's cool. Yeah. Anyhow, there's one building in an Art Deco kind of style, and it is a hotel, and we could have stayed in such a place and had this kind of, statues or whatever inside the lobby, but we chose to stay in a place here, the Condesa MX or something like that, which was quite a bit less expensive. And how we got into this Roma Norte area is a friend of Deborah's out of Juneau. We had gone to visit her the year before in Alamos, Mexico, and turns out she lives part-time in Mexico City, and she wanted us to rent from her in Mexico City, which we thought we'd do at first, but it was too expensive, so we ended up here. But that's how we got interested in Roma Norte. Plus the movie Roma was a good incentive. But yeah, it's a cool area. The first day out, we just wandered around within the few blocks from the hotel, and there's a lot of these statues throughout all of Mexico City, but this is one of a reproduction or copy of David, and Deborah couldn't, keep her eye off this guy. It was all I could do to get her to turn around and take this picture. But anyhow, And this one again is
The goddess of fertility.
goddess of fertility.
In the Roman pantheon, and this is a famous statue that's in Madrid that they made a copy of,
Yeah.
and it's Sibyllus, the Roman goddess of fertility, right in her hood.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and as part of this idea of dispelling myths about Mexico City, believe it or not, they still have pay telephones around, but also free Wi-Fi within the parks. Well, Deborah used this quite a bit. I did have a SIM card on my phone, but Deborah didn't. But she was able to utilize the Wi-Fi within the parks. And I don't quite remember, but I guess then our hotel had some outrageous speed of Wi-Fi, 300 or 400 megabit kind of stuff, and yeah, really impressive actually. Another myth, I mean, this is common in a lot of big cities, but bicycling and electric bikes were very common here in Mexico City. And yeah, a lot of people were using these things, not in this particular day, obviously, but yeah. Over to you.
Over to me. We're still in the neighborhood. We have walking streets with lots of trees, clean walking streets, and we have public art. And there was an entire display of huichol, soccer shoe and soccer balls. There were many more soccer balls down this street. And the huichol artwork is that beaded artwork that the Huichol Indians do. And so if you look closely, that entire shoe and part of that soccer ball is made with little tiny beads, just out there for all of us to enjoy. So on the subject of cleanliness, there are street crews keeping now this is Mexico City Centro, of course, but more naked female statues, which are everywhere, lovely. And this is the cleaning crew having lunch, and they all take their jobs really seriously, and they clean up. There's a lot of street food at night that you can buy, and these women come by and clean everything up. And so we had a wonderful chat about what a great job they're doing, and they talk about how much they love their jobs, and they're glad they have them. This is actually the Alameda Park, but yeah. So the other thing to notice is we didn't see any homeless, and apparently per capita, Mexico City has half the homeless as either New York or Los Angeles. Not countrywide, of course, but just city to city.
Okay.
Yeah.
And pretty innovative about hauling garbage. These trucks you'd see, and they were just totally packed up all over the top. As much stuff as they could load onto these trucks, they would do it. And they were out there every day, pulling this stuff out of here.
Every day.
So it was pretty impressive, actually.
It was impressive. Very few piles of garbage. Okay, now we are going to take you into Chapultepec Park, which was in our neighborhood, twice as big as Central Park in New York City, known as the lungs of CDMX, and a fascinating park. And so, here we go. Los Noños Heroes.
So yeah, on the way in, the first thing you come across is this impressive memorial here, and this brought, for me at least, I think Deborah too, a piece of history that I certainly never learned about in school or anywhere else. But apparently, when the United States took over a large part of northern Mexico, which now is California, Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah, actually, to do so, they invaded Mexico City, believe it or not, and they came marching up from Veracruz, pretty much along the same path as Cortez did. And this castle was kind of the last holdout in that battle. And there were 6 young Mexican soldiers that refused to surrender. So they committed suicide, basically. They wrapped themselves in the Mexican flag, jumped off from this castle back here, and died. And their remains, I guess, are underneath each of these pillars. So those pillars represent, each of those guys. And this statue in the middle is really impressive. There's a lot of statues of women throughout Mexico City and the rest of Mexico that we've seen. But this is very moving when you're standing there and you're realizing, you're just learning that history, and you realize this is one of her sons that probably,
Yeah.
died, jumped off this or was part
Yeah.
of the battle. But
Yeah.
I did, who knows? I had never learned that.
We didn't study. I never studied this in school.
Yeah.
1847. It was under Polk. There was definitely, issues at home about it. Apparently, Thoreau wrote Civil Disobedience and went to jail for one night before he was bailed out about this war because he felt like it was so completely, unfair. But Mexico lost 55% of its territory in less than 2 years to the United States. So this puts the Russian invasion of Ukraine in perspective. It's not that long ago. Montezuma. So the Chapultepec Park, Chapultepec means grasshopper in Nahuatl, was where Montezuma, the Aztec emperor, summered. It was his resort. There's water that was supposedly where he bathed. And this tree, hundreds and hundreds of years old, died from the smog, from the air pollution in the park. And now we're going to go to the castle. And this is the view that we started out with from the castle. And you can see the 6 pillars for the young cadets who martyred themselves. And you can also see down the Reforma. So the street, 5 kilometers from this park down to the Zocalo. Total tree-lined, gorgeous street.
Zocalo being central
the central
of town,
square.
the central square, the old part of town, I guess.
Yeah. So here's the castle. And so the castle was originally built on what was the high ground for the Aztecs by the Spaniards. Then after the U.S. Invaded Mexico, the Europeans got concerned about buffering the American expansionism, and they sent a puppet emperor over to Mexico at the request of the conservatives in Mexico. So Maximilian shows up with his wife Carlotta, and they remodel this castle after his Italian villa back home. And it's beautiful. You walk up and you see how they lived. Their reign over Mexico was very short-lived. It was about 3 years before Juarez took control again. But this is how they lived, and we can see how Carlotta actually did a lot of as the queen. She was actually considered one of the first women in the Americas to have any kind of political power, because Maximilian was off playing around, and she ran the country for a few years. Here's her bedroom. I love it. Beautiful. When the politics got hot, Carlotta was sent back to Europe, and Maximilian was executed. And so from then on, this is in 1867, the castle was used by the presidents of Mexico as their domiciles. Today, the president lives down at the Zocalo. So now we're going to leave Chapultepec, and we're going to take you down the Reforma. Oh, just as an aside too, Maximilian is the reason that the whole layout of Mexico City is like Paris. So you have all totally, like I would have never known this, roundabouts. So you have roundabouts with a statue and all the spokes coming out the way you do in Paris. And we've seen several of those statues already, but now we'll take you down the Reforma and we'll see some more.
Yeah, so this is the start of one day. We walked this whole thing up from the park to the Zocalo, and it was pretty close to Christmas, so there were poinsettias everywhere, which they're real big on this here, on this sign. Yeah, and as we go down the street now, this particular day was a Sunday, and what they do on Sundays in Mexico City on this main drag is they close it off entirely every Sunday, and everybody who's got a bicycle will come riding down this road to get in a good day of bike riding from the park to the Zocalo. We were here early enough. I guess there weren't too many bikes getting going yet, but anyhow, all the way down through here were just thousands and thousands of the poinsettia flowers And so along the way, here's biker here. But again, as you're walking down this road, there's again more and more of these outrageous buildings, beautiful architecture to them. And here's one of these central statues, and I told you I wouldn't remember who this is.
El Angel. It's the statue
the angel.
Yeah, I've got it, Gigi. To the monument of independence. And so the skulls of the independence fighters like Hidalgo and Allende are buried underneath. And apparently you can take a ride up to the top, which we did not do.
But these are all poinsettias on the steps here. I was getting ready for the Christmas holidays. And we put this in because it's a shot at night. It's really beautiful at night going around. And it's a big roundabout going around that statue.
Which with very busy traffic. So
yeah, a lot of traffic.
So the Sunday closure of the traffic was magnificent.
So on our way, got pulled aside rather forcefully by this fellow who wanted to shine my shoes. He succeeded.
Shoes have never recovered.
Shoes, they're still shiny. Come on, what are you talking about? But yeah, apparently there's a lot of these fellows running around town shining shoes. It's just how they make their money. Back here is the Palace of Fine Arts, and right, Palace of Fine Arts, yeah, and beautiful buildings, all marble
from Italy, Italian marble,
believe it or not, yeah. And we took an advantage on a later night to get tickets to go to this show that was focused on Mexican folk music and dance and so on. And we were in the very high nosebleed seats, but you can see here just a beautiful, curtain here and all of this work on the walls, the painting,
gorgeous,
and the dancing and music was just totally outrageous. Yeah,
all live music,
all live,
yeah,
and very energetic stuff.
Beautiful. A couple modern pieces as well as the folkloric. It was great.
Yeah. So we continue on. There was one of the side streets was totally a pedestrian walkway, all lined with shops. People are out Christmas shopping. As we got further to the Zocalo, which is right at the end of this street, it just kept getting to be more crowded with people. Yeah. And here we are. We walk into that big central square. It's a huge open area here.
The biggest Zocalo in the Americas and the biggest cathedral in the Americas.
Which was under some repair work here on the towers, but
apparently it's constantly under repair because this was lake bottom, and the Spaniards are the ones who drained the lake after the Aztecs, and the ground is infirm, and that this cathedral is very big and very heavy, and it's constantly cracking and groaning, sinking into the lake marsh, bottom.
Yeah. Huge government building on the backside here. Yeah, just more shots of this thing. This is probably also one of the largest flag in the Americas, I guess. It was huge. Yeah. And shot of this big government building. We hope to see some artwork by Diego Rivera, who we'll talk about a little bit later. But it was closed essentially, but
we couldn't find our way in.
Very heavily guarded.
Yeah, Palacio Nacional.
There were a lot of people out on this day.
Oh, there was a demonstration there. Police corruption. So that's where people demonstrate.
More poinsettias. These trees were just entirely. They're fake trees, but it's all poinsettias being put on here.
A lot of poinsettias. Yeah.
And this is probably a week and a half before Christmas.
Week before Christmas.
So by Christmas, this entire Zocalo would have been totally set up and decorated for Christmas Day.
And then you can get smudged by an Aztec shaman, which of course I did. These guys work hard right under the cathedral, pretty fun.
So yeah, just
huge pinatas,
and
full-on decorations. Okay. Plaza Mayor. So up until 1978, when they were digging for the metro, they had no idea that the cathedral had been built, as is classic of the Spaniards all over Mexico, right on top of the ancient Aztec temple. And so they figured that out when they were building the metro, and they decided to tear down some of the more modern buildings. And now, as a visitor, you can walk right next to, the modern Zocalo. You can walk through the ruins from the Aztecs, which are from the 1300s and 12, 13, 1400s. And so this is what that looks like. They're finding more and more treasures as they dig. And right up next to Palacio Nacional. So pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, this was a big shopping day, and this picture is actually a snapshot from a video we did, but there were everybody was out basically, and they're all huge families that are all together shopping. And there were times we would get into here and you were literally stuck. You could do nothing but go with the crowd. There was so many people.
I would have been squished. Dennis could see out.
Yeah, I was one of the rare heads above all of it. It was interesting, but very, very busy, crowded day there. Lots of very colorful stuff to buy, and tons of shopping and colorful food stands and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, and I did manage to buy a little wallet. This fellow was interesting. He was making all this stuff himself, doing all this leather work, and it's beautiful stuff. We bought a couple, three of these things.
Yeah,
and they're very excellent leather work in it.
Yeah. Shopping.
So then on to food. One of the myths again. We all have an idea of what classic, I think, Mexican food. And we did walk by this fellow who's making the corn tortillas, and kind of I've seen this elsewhere in Loretto and so on. This machine is all about squishing down the mush for whether it's a flour tortilla or corn tortilla, and they spit out hundreds of the flattened tortillas. But
Esperanza,
yeah,
our local coffee shop.
this was real close to where we were staying, and we found this the first morning, and just tons of beautiful desserts and pastries and all the coffee concoctions that we're used to, but inexpensive, like $1 or $2 for lattes and cappuccinos. So
Fresh juice.
just a lot of good food all along. There was lots of fresh juices every day. We'd have fresh juice.
Jugo naranja fresca every day, or pineapple.
Yeah, and this is a rooftop restaurant we went to. And
also in our neighborhood. And here we are with sushi and a margarita, and I'm drinking my club soda. And I just want to say, as a restaurateur, we always had a linen napkin. We always got full service. Like my mineral water was poured for me every night. Really great service. I mean, it was impressive, and great food.
But that didn't apply to the stands along the streets.
No.
There was
no linen
service. But
good food anyway.
Excellent food at those things too. But some of these restaurants were totally outrageous. We got introduced to mole here, but we continued on after Mexico City to Puebla and Oaxaca, and that's where we really truly found it. The most.
We went in the heart of mole.
The heart of mole, yes. But this was our introduction. And then, of course, this is more of not really a street vendor, but a kind of
in the park.
Restaurants in the park, and just really good stuff. And always had to have a coffee after a meal and so on. On the left there, we were starting to watch some of the World Cup soccer, and everywhere you're just presented with tons of stuff. But in the end, it got to me. I had a day of not doing well.
Dennis had a day of Montezumas in the hotel room. I had mine later on the trip.
It wasn't too bad. It was just one day.
Yeah.
But I guess we overdid it a little bit.
This is one of the Grand Hotel Ciudad, also off the Zocalo, where you could spend, $600 a night instead of $35 like we were. That's real Tiffany glass in the ceiling, and we went inside just to take a look. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that glass was amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have gone from the park down to the Zocalo, and now we're going to take a couple field trips. So this is maybe half an hour, not quite, from downtown, and this is the Basilica de Guadalupe. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Guadalupe legend, she is the patron saint of Mexico and now all of Latin America. And apparently she came over with Cortez because his Virgin Mary, in Spain they have zillions of Virgin Marys with all different names, but in Mexico they keep it simple and they have Guadalupe. And apparently Cortez came from Extremadura, where the Guadalupe Virgin lived. And this is a pilgrimage site, 9 million people.
What's the date?
December 12th.
You know.
So we timed our trip so that, because I've always wanted to go to this sacred location. Our hostelario at the hotel said, don't go on the 12th. You'll be, quashed. Go on the Friday, the 9th, the 10th. And so this is what we did. We took a field trip 2 days before the Sunday when it would have gotten even more crowded.
So, yeah, I mean, there's like 25 million people live in the Mexico City area. It's estimated that 9 million come from outside to attend this 3-day festival about Guadalupe. So the town increases by another third over this weekend. It's amazing.
You can see that hanging the flags, and their different families all were wearing Guadalupe t-shirts and gathered together. Let's go to the next. There we go. And then you have the opportunity to buy chatki and lots of Guadalupe stuff.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd include these pictures so you could see the locals getting into it. The legend is that Juan Diego, who's the little boy pictured there underneath the moon at her feet, in 1531, so just about 10 years after Cortez, had a vision of the Guadalupe and came to the priest and told the priest, you can see here the statue on the right, that's Juan Diego. He's got the cloak of Guadalupe. And he's telling the priest, as Guadalupe directed him to build a church, on this location. And the Catholic priest, doesn't believe Juan Diego, who's indigenous and who has received this vision all in Nahuatl, in the local indigenous language. And he sends him packing, and Juan Diego goes back, and Guadalupe reappears on the 12th of December and says, I will grow roses in December and make a miracle so that this priest will realize that I'm for real and you're for real. And so we're standing right here in the location where these roses bloomed and where the Catholic priest got the message that Guadalupe was for real. And this saint, the patron saint of Mexico, most Mexicans have a firm belief in this legend. What's really great is that the location where we are right now was the Aztec pilgrimage site for the goddess who was the mother of the gods, Tenochtitlan. So one of the things I love about the Mexican culture is their ability to integrate, the conqueror's theology with their own. And so the Mexicans are still pilgriming to the same site that the Aztecs made their pilgrimage to for their goddess, the mother of all gods.
Blending of the religions.
So we're going to keep walking here, and we're going to see this beautiful, well, you can see my gray hair amid a lot of dark. Love these braids. This outdoor statuary, I think, is really symbolic of who the Black Madonna, who Guadalupe is. And you can see how inclusive this is, because she's got the priest right here, and she has the indigenous, she has the women, she has the children and the warriors. I mean, it's all the people supplicating to Guadalupe.
And again, this Black Madonna is not necessarily meaning like a black person. Negro, it's just a dark-skinned
woman of color.
And that bothered the Catholics for a long time.
Yes, it did. And so it took a long time before the Vatican it was under Pope John, I think, in the 1990s, like 400 years later, that the Vatican actually said, okay, you know, we see that Guadalupe is for real and she gets to be a saint. There's Juan Diego.
Okay. So,
Cool. So here we are. And now they, in the 60s, built a new church for Guadalupe, the Basilica.
to handle the 9 million command.
And if we go inside on our next slide, this church handles 10,000 people at a time. And it's where the relic, the original cloak from the 1530s, is hanging, and where everybody makes a pilgrimage to go see it. And more fresh flowers. It was absolutely beautiful. Dennis figured out that there was a moving walkway behind the altar, and that you could go and take a look up at Guadalupe and supposedly the original cloak. And here we have the best picture we have of the Mexican flag with the eagle and the snake and the cactus.
So these are just to show more of this phenomenon of Guadalupe. This is not an exact reproduction of the original painting here, but because she's got some stars in the cloak here, but it gives you an idea of what this is. And as Deb said earlier, now Guadalupe is accepted throughout all the Americas as, for the Catholics at least, as a saint. And we were just in Spain a month ago, and around in Sevilla, some church we were in, not figured out which one that was now. We came upon this painting, and look at this. There is a crescent here. Other Virgin Marys that we've seen in Europe and elsewhere in the world, I guess, you never have this crescent moon figure here. In any event, the significance is that crescent moon is always with the Guadalupe, and it turns out when you have a new crescent moon in December in Mexico at that latitude, it has got that orientation to the horizon, whereas in Spain and as well as North America, it's not positioned like that. It's kind of sideways, yeah. So
Dennis figured this out by looking into the sky and pointing it out to me, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and the fact that this is in Spain like this is some aspect of this, you know, Cortez took it to Mexico. Somehow the concept of the Guadalupe came back. It looks like it. Who knows?
Yeah.
My interpretation. Yeah, the last bit on, this is yours.
Okay. No estoy yo aquí, que soy tu madre. Am I not here, who is your mother? So, I mean, this culture. Mother's Day is bigger in Mexico than Christmas. So it's all about mom. And, you know, am I not here?
Yeah.
So this is a family that brought roses and their figurine of Guadalupe, and we took pictures of them, and they took pictures of us. And yes, it's a joyful time. Okay.
Okay, so another field trip to this area, which again I don't remember the name.
Tres culturas,
That's it,
three
Tres
cultures.
Culturas, yeah. So we're looking at three cultures here. So these ruins are from the Aztecs. This church was the very first church built in Mexico after Cortez conquered. And then these are 60s, maybe 70s era low-income housing that's been built right adjacent to all of this. And so a person we met the very first day had told us that this is a place we should go see because it's interesting how these three cultures are juxtaposed to each other. The church is definitely old and was built from original stonework laying around, probably chunks of the Aztec buildings
chunks
and all
of the
too,
building,
yeah.
right.
And yeah, so it kind of has a crude appearance to the construction, and the inside is not as grandiose as so many cathedrals are, but it's still very big and airy and so on. And of course, there's a Guadalupe altar within that. And
You'll note the eagles.
And the symbology up in here is, so it was built by slaves. They were the natives that had been enslaved to build this church, but they snuck in some of their own belief systems in here. And so, yeah, it's an interesting place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So another field trip off to the pyramids of the sun and moon. And we took a bus ride out there, or I guess it was a van because it was whatever. But we saw a lot of these, this chairlift kind of stuff. And there is no skiing or whatever in Mexico City, but these are actually a form of transportation here. A lot of people utilize these to go to work and come back, you know. And you see a lot of this outside of the center core of Mexico City. It's just houses kind of built on top of each other. So.
Yeah.
Anyhow, here we go.
Here we are. Okay, so we're in Teotihuacan, which is pre-Hispanic, and it's pre-Aztec. And the pyramids, these are some of the third largest in the world, actually, this Pyramid of the Sun, the largest in Mesoamerica, and its date is roughly 400 BC to 400 AD, when this town, because it had up to 200,000 people living in it, was functional. I guess they used to think it was Toltec, but now they're trying to figure out Mixtec, Zapotec, Mayan, and they just call it Teotihuacan to keep it simple. So the Aztecs, who were living nearby on the Lake of the Moon, thought of this as a sacred place, and they called it the place where men become gods, but nobody lived here. And so we're walking through it, having a beautiful day. We've got the obsidian mine that's up on the top of the mountain there. Many of the pyramids in Mexico are co-located with the obsidian mines for trade and, you know, making tools. And then the Pyramid of the Moon on the right. Now these names are made up. They're made up by the Aztecs because, yep, the Teotihuacan, we don't know what they called them. Been a lot of excavations underneath. They're finding all kinds of tunnels. These two pyramids had been pretty well ransacked by the Spaniards and probably the Aztecs. But as you keep walking, oh, here we go. This is Pyramid of the Moon. Okay, so, you know, in the day, you used to be able to climb the pyramids in Mexico, but I think they're getting small. We weren't really allowed to climb. But our geologist could
Yeah, well, it's just all volcanic rock and that mortar with these little pebbles in there. We're not sure if that's just part of the restoration or original stuff that was being done, but yeah, mostly volcanic rocks.
So then we continue walking and we go several kilometers down to the most recent excavation, which is Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. So this pyramid is just being excavated, and apparently in 2003, that recently, big rainstorm, sinkhole after a heavy rain, and all of a sudden they realize that there are all kinds of treasures underneath this pyramid that have not been ransacked, precious, you know, stones and all kinds of stuff. They've definitely found lots of burials from either sacrificial victims or war victims. So they are just excavating that now, and we met a marvelous guy who was happy to sell us obsidian.
Yeah, so this is an obsidian disc. It's only a little bit larger than the palm of my hand, I guess, or my hand spread out. But it's a representation of the Aztec calendar. There's some debate about that, actually, but from what we can tell, it is the Aztec calendar. And it's all obsidian. This fellow, I bought it from, his family lived near the top of that one hill that we pointed out earlier. And his family, for a couple of generations, mined the obsidian. They cut it, polish it up, and they have mechanical devices now that just run through and etch out various kinds of designs. In this case, of course, the Aztec calendar. Deborah bought a bow and arrow set for
Huxley.
for grandson Huxley. Yeah. There was lots of stuff you could buy, of course, in this place. But yeah, more about the calendar later.
Okay, so now we're gonna close our marvelous presentation with 3 museums and race through them. This is the Anthropological Museum that's world famous, also in Chapultepec Park. And they try to display the works from all these different cultures all over Mexico. And so we start with Dennis in front of the frieze. This is what these pyramids apparently used to look like. They were very colorful with all of these carvings. And so they're recreating them so we could see in Teotihuacan, where we just were, what it might have actually looked like. Here we are on the left. Now, as we go through this museum, which I actually went back for 2 days worth, we are not going to be able to tell you exactly what everything is. But this, we know, is Chacmul. It's Toltec. Toltecs happened after Teotihuacan. And they put sacrificial offerings on the belly, a reclining figure from about 1000 AD. And one of these guys.
They look cool, but we don't remember now what they're.
Which
but
culture they came from.
Yeah, but outrageous
yeah.
stuff that they wore for their ceremonies and so on.
And this is what's being excavated under these pyramids.
Yeah.
Picasso, move over. Pretty amazing.
It's not Picasso.
No, but
apparently they were doing this stuff. Yeah. So back to this Aztec calendar, just quick. The in this museum, they're trying to say that this particular stone, which is very large, is actually something called Stone of the Sun and not the original Aztec calendar. But when you start really looking, comparing a real Aztec calendar to this, it's hard to tell any real difference. But this is the size of this Stone of the Sun or Aztec calendar in this particular museum. You can see it's quite large. Yeah. But they're saying it was a sacrificial stone, actually. So, yeah, these guys were into killing each other, and they do it right in the center there, apparently. So, so I just kind of fascinated by this because when we were in Madrid just last month, there was one of these Aztec calendar stones that was probably twice as large as this guy here.
Yeah.
But this is in Madrid, so it got hauled back from Mexico on a wooden boat, apparently, sailboat, and carried into Madrid. Yeah. But so this is the obsidian thing I bought, a real Aztec calendar, and supposedly Stone of the Sun, but there's a lot of real similarities to it all. Just an aside, really.
The Olmecs, these are the giant basalt heads that floated up out of the swamps near Veracruz. And the Olmecs are the oldest culture that we know about in Mexico, 1500 to 400 BC. Amazing.
Yeah.
So amazing. And then, of course, people are really familiar with the Mayans, Palenque, the jaguar mask, and those guys were maybe 300 BC to 900 AD down on the Yucatan. Also,
beautiful stuff.
Yeah, and in Oaxaca, the Zapotec Mixta Monte Alban, that was about 500 BC to 900 AD, and maybe where actually this turquoise mask came from.
This is our slides to land chain. Yeah.
More items. These were taken out from under the Plaza Mayor, so they're going to be Aztec. More recent. We're going to end with her because I think she's fascinating. And there she is. And the reflection, this is what they might have found underneath the pyramid, with the little figurines of the family with the skeletons, either the buried royalty or the sacrificed victims, probably buried royalty because they have all the figurines next to them. Yeah, the cultures of Mexico are rich and varied, and we are now going to jump to the modern day.
What is it called again?
Huichol of Folklorica.
Oh yeah, but the Huichol of Darth Vader. George Lucas got his inspiration from this. Which pyramid did they find this under?
Beads again, totally beads. So we went to the Folklorica Museum where they were having a piñata contest, and we thought this one was especially fabulous. here are the Red Devils, all part of Day of the Dead, which of course is very important in Mexico, November 1 and 2, where we sort of communicate across the way with those who've gone before us. And another, you see the skull back there with all the
One big skull with a bunch of little
yeah, with all
tiny
the-
skulls jumping around.
Mexicans are familiar and comfortable with death in a way that we could learn from.
Yeah.
Very. Okay, the next two pictures from this museum are a little reflective, but here is El Catrina, who was a spoof on the Mexican elite because she's a woman in European dress, and you can see she has the Nahuatl, the Aztec feathered serpent around her neck in the
I just
boa.
realized this is the same in the mural.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the Tree of Life, again, a little hard to see,
A
but
lot of detail, which we're not
Yeah.
going to dwell on there. But
probably familiar with the wooden Oaxacan painted wooden figurines. Well, this peacock takes the game. They're beautiful. That's a gorgeous big painted peacock. Here we are, a Huichol VW bug.
yeah,
The entire bug has been beaded. Spectacular.
it's fantastic. We're not sure about the text here. I'm just guessing it says it's air-cooled engine. You know. If you knew anything about Volkswagens, you'd know what that means.
Yeah. Okay, now our final museum.
Final cultural run here, I guess. So this is the famous Frida
Kahlo.
Kahlo and Juan. No,
Diego Rivera.
Diego. I keep wanting to say Juan Diego Rivera, yes. You know, these were two famous early 20th century artists from Mexico City area and so on. And Frida was interested in his mural work and tried to mentor under him. But I don't know the whole story. They eventually became lovers and married and had a rather tempestuous, difficult
Challenging.
relationship. They got married and divorced and married again and various things. But they produced very unique art, unique to Mexico, unique to the world. And so Diego Rivera, these on the corners are self-portraits, and this is him, a picture of him painting on one of his most famous murals, if you're going to take a look at. But he also did some paintings. This is of his daughter here, which is quite nice. And he spent some time in the Soviet Union in the early days of the Bolshevik time, Bolshevik Revolution, and the takeover of communists of Russia and so on. There's a whole chapter in their history of Frida and his life with Tolstoy and not Trotsky, sorry. Yeah. This is his most famous mural, a very large mural, a lot of history in this thing. And it was originally in the Prada earthquake took it down.
Yeah.
And then they had to put it back together and restore it in this place that is actually within. So this is called A Day in the Park, this mural.
Sunday afternoon.
Or Sunday afternoon in the park, yeah. And just quickly, it's fascinating to look at this thing. There's a lot of detail, a lot of history in this. If you knew all of the history of Mexico, every one of these
Every face
characters
is
has some
real
meaning
person.
to their history. This
Yeah.
is like the original,
Maybe Benito Juarez.
president there.
Cortez is supposed to be
Yeah.
in here somewhere.
So I'm just going left to right. These two will be in the next. Here's that
El
same,
Catrina.
that was in that museum, the display we saw earlier. This is Diego Rivera as a young man, I guess. Yeah. All of these characters are, who knows, but out of the history. Here's Frida. She was put in later. One of the last pieces put into the mural, apparently. It's interesting. I got a close up here. She's holding a yin yang kind of device here, probably symbolizing the back and forth of their relationship.
Yes, the male, female.
Plus their personalities. There's a lot of symbolism in this thing. But as we keep going to the right, Just lots of different scenes from the history. This is the start of the Mexican Revolution over here.
An indigenous family getting in trouble with the police.
Yeah, they were being kicked off their land someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the very right side, and Mexican Revolution.
Yeah.
This is a bunch of politicians from more recent times that were caught having affairs with various women, and these women are here. Yeah, all kinds of.
I have to say, I've never seen a Diego Rivera in person before, and it's remarkable. We spent a lot of time staring at this, and they had an interpretation. There was a guide, right? So Alameda, Sunday in the park.
Here it is. They're still having fun in the same park, yeah.
Sundays in the Alameda Park are still enjoyed by all the Mexico City inhabitants.
The source of the music was just a big old boombox.
Okay, and so for our final trip, we are going into the Frida Kahlo's house where she was born and where she lived with Diego and where she entertained Trotsky. And we're going to just see a few of her pieces.
Yeah, and always big crowds go in here. But this is the interior. There's a little panel about Diego there, and just took some pictures of her early days. So when she was a teenager, I suppose, and a few years later, she had a phase where she was quite attractive, of course.
It skips over.
Nice
photographs.
photo capturing just so much of what her personality and who she was in this. And she had an accident as a young girl. Her back got seriously injured, and it was a problem for her for the rest of her life. Several times she had to be in body casts where they tried to fix her. But she painted her casts various times. This is during her Trotsky visit, probably, and visit the Soviet symbol there. And she's got a painting of a child here. But all of those kind of things, plus the relationship with Diego, caused her to produce some very strange looking art. It's pretty difficult to access sometimes when you first see it, but
so here we are. This is called The Two Fridas. She painted this in 1939, and it's very big. It's her biggest painting, and of course people interpret how they do, but the healthy heart on the right, in more of an indigenous dress, and then her mom was indigenous Spanish and her dad was European Jewish, and she was always caught between cultures. But apparently this painting represents the wedding dress of, she had been married and then divorced and was back together with Diego by the time this was painted. But she's cutting, her heart, she's bleeding in terms of the marriage and the relationship. It needs to be said that, what she said about it was she's rejected by Diego in the white dress, and then she's in the traditional dress, she's accepted by Diego. So the whole duality, but he really encouraged her artwork, and he believed she was, the first, female artist to really express the female experience. And he didn't try to change her. They definitely were muses and inspirational to one another. But she became addicted to painkillers from her lifetime of operations and died young at 47. And there's some more.
It's just stuff she did. It's reflective of the struggles
The
she had
operations,
with the pains and
miscarriage, the one on the right is her miscarriage, Diego's child. And she was a fashionista. So she took the traditional dress and made it happen. Of course, she was famous for all the silver jewelry, and how about the shoe? We never got to see her shoes under the dress. Dennis took that great picture. And there's a few pictures of the house where they lived. So the bedroom and the kitchen, you can see.
Dining area, kitchen,
Yeah.
I guess,
You see the Frida and Diego up on the wall. And we're coming to the very end. You can see her wheelchair. This is apparently, this was her studio. And this was where she was painting, very close to the end.
This was an unfinished
Yeah.
here, and this was their last,
And this was,
the one done just before.
yeah, Viva la Vida, and she died in 1954 in Coyoacan, Mexico. I love this piece.
Yes.
So,
Love the life.
long live the life.
Long live the life, yes.
Which is, you know, very Mexican. Long live the life. Oh, before we, to the very final slide, I just had one thing that I wanted to say about the the conquest. And that was that this great saying, and I'm not sure where it comes from, the conquest was neither a triumph or a defeat, but the painful birth of the mixed race that is Mexico today. So, yeah,
We had a good trip.
we had a good trip.
And thanks for
Thanks for listening.
hanging in. Look at that 1 hour.
Yeah, not bad, huh? So maybe you guys have questions. That would be fun.
We're gonna leave that up. No.
Why not? I look better there than I do here.
So how do we unmute them all?
We unmute them all and you guys can,
People can unmute themselves if they have a question.
oh, great,
okay, there we
okay.
go.
Dennis, and it's Bill Green. I have a question for you. You mentioned about all the trees in the park dying from smog, but all your pictures are nice blue skies and the sun. When we were
That's
there
amazing.
a long, long time ago, we were there for about a week, and we had one afternoon that was not smoggy. It was terrible.
Oh,
So
wow.
obviously,
It's amazing it's amazing what Photoshop can do.
No,
Did you see any
We were
smog
lucky.
at all when you were there?
Sorry, Bill?
Did you see any smog at all when you were there?
Yeah, well, yeah, there were some smoggy days.
yeah,
Yeah.
but nothing, nothing dramatic. I mean, nothing where you felt like you had to wear a mask or,
Of course, this was back in the 70s, so a long, long time ago, but
yeah,
you went outside, like those street shots, you wouldn't see more than 2 blocks down the street.
wow,
And stuff.
Wow,
And that was
well-
just about every day.
maybe there's some progress.
Yeah, let's hope. Because it was
Yeah.
also the same time of year, so it wasn't like a seasonal thing, because we were also there in December, so.
Yeah. November, I think, is supposed to be the cleanest
Yeah.
with the air, but we were lucky in December.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I have a quick question. Is there a story about why the eagle is biting off the head of a snake on top of a cactus?
It's the god whose name I can't pronounce, Waxal, is the Aztec god told the Aztecs who were wandering around trying to figure out where to put their city or where to settle.
For the first tent. or something.
Right, and they were supposed to be looking for that sign from God. And so when they saw the eagle eating the snake on top of the cactus, they knew that was home. That's as much as I know.
Whatever god that was.
It's Huatx,
Well, that guy,
that one,
yeah.
that guy.
Okay.
So yeah, and because it's the Mexican flag, still, that's the
Yeah.
Aztec symbol and that's their flag.
Yep.
Hmm.
It means, Tenochtitlan means cactus on top of rock. That's what the name of
Right.
of the city meant. But yeah, that's all I know.
Cool. That was really fun.
Good. It's a great city.
Deb Amato here.
Hey, Amato.
Amato.
Hi, Dennis.
Hey.
Hey, at the beginning of the presentation, you referenced a movie.
Oh yeah, 2 movies actually. Roma, it's black and white. It's fairly new. Definitely worth watching. Just Roma, Roma. It's a artistic film, but it's exactly like the streets in that. I mean, it's filmed right
Yeah.
there where we were living. It's excellent. And then the Frida Kahlo movie, if you haven't seen that, and with Selma Hayek, it's great and really true to her story and really worth watching. And as Dennis says, the best music score he's heard in a movie
That's one of
ever.
definitely one of my favorite music scores. Yeah, just fantastic music.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
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 Anybody else?
It's a cool place to go. And was a surprise to us. You know,
Yeah, yeah. I had been afraid to go there by myself and I never, yeah, had no idea what I was going to. But it was Teresa from Alamos who had, had the place there. She told us she feels like it's the Paris of the Americas. And
We heard that from a lot of people.
yeah, so
So do you both speak Spanish and was that an issue? For,
Duolingo.
The whole thing. No, I know very little. Deborah's pretty good at it. Gets us by with it.
Yeah, I'm a get by girl with Spanish. I do not know the language at all.
I guess my question was, in Mexico City, is there enough English speakers that did you really need to have Spanish or was it not? What you,
It helped to try for sure, but there was a lot of English
Yeah.
spoken there. When we left Mexico City, that was no longer true.
Yeah,
It was it was getting more challenging, but
yeah.
yeah, we were able to stumble through usually pretty good.
And unlike in some museums, most of the museums had both English and Spanish in terms of reading about them. So that was helpful, which was not true in Oaxaca. I mean,
A lot of the cab drivers and Uber drivers that we encountered actually were young kids. They were going to school, and this was how they were paying for school.
Mhm.
And they
They were good.
knew English, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Deborah would start out speaking Spanish, and they'd
Yeah.
get along pretty well. And then you hit a tough part, and you go to English, so that I could participate, but yeah, that was cool to see all these kids
Yeah.
doing school and working.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the more dangerous things, there's a lot of bike routes in Mexico City, and a lot of people ride bicycles. But a problem with the cabs is they don't pay attention to that. So they pull into where the bike routes are, or in a position that when you open the door goes into the bike lane. And there were several times we almost took out a bicyclist because we hadn't looked. So we had to, after several days, really, look closely for any bikers that were coming along, because we could have taken them out. We almost did it once. I remember. Yeah, so if you ever go there, try and keep that in mind.
But it is a fantastic walking city. I mean, we walked and walked and walked and walked, and you can find, walking strazas with trees and that one tree that we showed you that died from the air pollution. That the rest of the park is green. I mean, it's really green. It's amazing.
But we were in Roland Norte.
Yes, we were,
and
and
it's
between there and the Zocalo. Yeah.
probably taken care of better than
Yeah.
maybe the rest of Mexico City.
Although
Who knows?
one thing to note is on the way into the Basilica de Guadalupe, that also had those really long tree-lined walking streets. I mean,
Yeah.
so there is a lot of walking to be done, and it felt safe, night and day.
At least in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was great. Thanks, guys.
You
You're
bet.
welcome.
Glad to do it.
I once traveled to Mexico City and I made it from the airport to the bus station and went to Cuernavaca on the bus. So I didn't really see much of Mexico City. I wish that I had. I learned a lot in your talk tonight. I wish I'd
Oh, good.
had time to go there.
Thanks, Russ. Yeah, it's fabulous. Oh, and by the way, it's close. It's not very far away. You can get there. On American Airlines, you're not flying
Oh,
across an
was it?
ocean.
Here in Reno, there's a Polaris.
Yeah, you can get direct flights to Mexico City. And I would say it was easily half as expensive as Spain, maybe less. I mean, it's not expensive. So that's another great thing. You can stay a long time and eat great food and not burn through your whole bank account.
And we did eat at some of the food stands along the way.
Yeah.
We didn't end up showing any pictures of those.
I know,
realized.
neither of us.
But some really great food from those stands too. There are thousands of them,
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
All right. Well, the snow is falling in Haines and it's about to fall in Reno, and Mexico City is under the sunshine.
It's even falling in Vancouver.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Anyway,
right.
That was great, thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
See you
Well, great talk.
later.
thanks.
All right. See you guys. Thanks
Yeah.
for showing up.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
again.
it's great.
Thanks for
Unplanned.
sharing.
And
Alright.
don't forget next week's talk about skiing in Arctic Norway with
Yeah, I
Jeff.
want
Yeah.
to see that.
Yeah,
Me
definitely.
too, yeah.
Okay.
All right, somebody's going to stop the recording, I guess.
I think Matt will